and welcome to this discussion by Hitachi Vantara and the Enterprise Strategy Group. We'll discuss the importance of building a secure and sustainable data platform. I'm Scott Sinclair, Practice Director with the Enterprise Strategy Group, and today I'm joined by Ian Clatworthy and Michael Pacheco from Hitachi Vantara. Together, we're talking about the increasing complexity of data infrastructure and how to modernize your data environment to best support your organization's demands and sustainability goals. But before we get to that, let me give Ian and Michael a chance to introduce themselves. Ian, why don't you start off?
Hey, Scott, thanks so much. Good to see you again, my friend. My name's Ian Clatworthy. For all of you that have tuned in, I'm the Director of Product Marketing here for our data platform systems at Hitachi Vantara. Good to be here.
Thanks, Ian. How about you, Michael?
Hello, Scott. Thanks for having us. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Mike Pacheco, Senior Product Marketing Manager with Hitachi Vantara, and I'm responsible for our file portfolio. I'm excited to chat with you today.
I am as well. And before we get to the conversation, though, I want to let everyone in our audience know that we will be taking questions. We probably won't get to it during the talk, but we'll have some time at the end. So if you do have a question and you'd like to submit it, please submit that via the questions tab on your screen, and we'll try to get to as many of those as we can towards the end. All right, with that being said and that out of the way, let me get started. I mentioned at the beginning that I'm a practice director with the Enterprise Strategy Group. And for those watching who may not be familiar with the Enterprise Strategy Group, we're an IT analyst firm with a heavy focus on research and strategy. And I'm going to share some of our research data today to really kind of set the stage, really build that foundation for the conversation and kind of talk about some of the big challenges that we're seeing in the market. And then maybe we can get into some of the things Hitachi Vantara is doing about it. I think the big thing when we talk about data and the data environment, it's impossible to have that conversation without acknowledging just the sheer massive impact data has on essentially every business. So according to our research, 55% of organizations agree with the statement that data is their business. So it's not just that data runs the company. For the majority of organizations, data drives a portion of revenue in addition to running all the operations. And as a result, 74% of organizations in our research agree that they're under pressure to accelerate IT infrastructure provisioning and deployment to support development teams and line of business teams. Essentially, the more data drives the business, the more pressure we are to better utilize that data and make sure it's available to all the teams. Now, the problem is, as all this environment scales, it becomes complex. And 68% of organizations in our research agree that overall complexity is slowing down IT operations and initiatives. So at the end of the day, we need data, so we create more of it, but the more that we have, the more it actually slows things down. And at the same time, sustainability is becoming a huge topic, which I plan to address here. Something that we identified in an additional study was that nearly 3/4 of organizations, 74%, identify as having a published goal or commitment to becoming carbon neutral. So at the end of the day, as data is growing and becoming more important to every facet of the business, the executive leadership of so many companies are saying, look, we need to be better global citizens, need to address climate change and become carbon neutral. Well, those initiatives often fall to the IT organization to actually go execute. And so how do we balance the challenges of growing data with the need to be more sustainable? And at the same time, when we look at our research data of the top challenges of data, it tends to be not just storing and protecting data. The top challenges often include how do we locate the right data set and get it to the right team at the right time? How do we automate data services? How do we better manage data across locations and across tiers? And at the same time, how do we better provide effective data protection and recovery? So, Michael, Ian, I've thrown a wealth of stats at you. But I really want to get to the insights that you have from all the conversations that you're having with your customers at Hitachi Vantara. Michael, why don't I start with you? When it comes to some of these challenges, what are you seeing with your customers?
Sure. Thank you, Scott. So, I think both Ian and I have spoken with a great deal of IT leaders and customers over the years. And, this data chaos that you hear about, that's a real thing. Overall, our customers are overwhelmed. Because as simple as it sounds and as old as this story may be, the amount of data that they're producing, the amount of data that they have to manage, the pace at which that data is growing is simply what they not had planned for. So it's growing this way, but it's also growing in, as far as from a data sprawl standpoint. It's in more locations, it's on-prem, it's on devices, it's in the cloud, it's at the edges, it's located across all these different systems. And guess what? Each of those different systems have their own unique set of problems, different access protocols, different applications. And not only is it tough to manage the volume, it's tough to protect. Now, with the prevalence of, cyber attacks and ransomware, overwhelmingly, that's what customers are worried about. So whether they say, their challenge is path to AI, or whether they say it's compliance or governance, it all stems from data. It all stems from too much data in too many locations, and there's too much of it to secure. It seems insurmountable. So, Ian, I know you've talked to a fair amount of customers as well in your years. So what are you hearing out there?
You hit on a really good point there, Michael. And Scott, you and I have spoken about this before. Hopefully some of our viewers have seen our On the Grill video that we did earlier this year. And we spoke a little bit about how customer conversations are changing. More and more, I'm hearing about sustainability. Right. These are what were kind of like high level ESG goals, very much at the C-suite. We know that's a top 3 priority now for the CIO is around sustainability. And when you look at a lot of our customers, well, if you're a bank, right, or even if you're a small, a smaller company, where's your CO2 production coming from? Well, it's probably the data center. The data center is what's driving CO2, production. By that scope 2 of I'm buying power in, where's it coming from? And now there's more of an emphasis to understand where that's coming from. What is my footprint as a business? How does that affect me? And that's going to change even more with new regulation coming in around scope 3 emissions and understanding who you're buying from. What do my vendors, what's the CO2 from what my vendors are producing for the service or the product that I'm buying? So we're seeing much more conversation around transparency. And I think the big change there is we're seeing for the first time, sustainability has always been really like a cost-saving exercise, right? We're going to save money. We're not going to use so much power. And now it's becoming much more of we will happily spend more if it means we're going to lower, our ESG footprint and meet much wider company goals. But we're seeing this at the grassroots level too, right? People who are, coming into businesses going, well, I recycle at home. I may have solar power. Or I might drive an electric car. I want those same things to be reflected in what I'm doing in my business as well. So, yeah, big changes in sustainability for sure.
Yeah, good points. And, when I think about it, even though you talked about how organizations may be open to the idea of spending a little bit more to become more sustainable and be more efficient in their power usage. I think about it as ideally we're trying to serve multiple goals with essentially, kind of the same set of data or the same set of technology and essentially fixed budgets, if that makes sense. And the idea is we can't just keep throwing more money at the problem, or in this case, even more power at the problem, because of how we balance growing data, both horizontal and vertically, in this world where we're trying to achieve our sustainability goals. So, Ian, I want to stay with you because there's a bunch of big challenges that are data related. How do businesses prioritize what to solve moving forward?
Let me stick on that sustainability one, right? Because actually lowering CO2 while you're expanding infrastructure, and going back to Michael's point, we have this explosion of data. This is a really complex thing to do, right? I have to really and then I have to report on it, right? This isn't a case of just, I've made it up and best of luck, right? I have to actually put it into my company's end of year report. So having specific statistics from vendors, right? What are we doing? How are we controlling our supply chains? Where are our metals coming from? And actually giving them tools to be able to report on it. So now I've actually deployed infrastructure, with cool technology to lower, power consumption, change P states and all this sort of stuff. But I want that dashboard that says every month I can pull that data. What's my sustainability score? And I can give it to the C-suite. So it feels like the IT teams start to become the nebulous for change within an organization. I think that's really important.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Michael, anything you want to add on that?
Yeah, thank you, Scott. And Ian, excellent points on sustainability. And just like you went back to sustainability, I'm going to go back to my data growth. Scott, your question was, what are some key challenges you think organizations need to prioritize to move forward? And when I hear forward, I think innovation. I think AI. The whole world wants to do more with AI. But guess what? You have to be able to, keep up with your data growth, and you have to do that without drowning in complexity. Right, you have to do that without your costs spiraling out of control, because once those two things start happening, you start to make compromises. You start to make non-ideal decisions, and that always means risk. And obviously, you can't just. And I think you mentioned this using your, what you said, Scott. You can't just throw more money at it. You can't just throw more storage at it. If your closet at home is, getting full, you don't put more hangers in there. You're exacerbating the issue. So similarly, organizations have to optimize the data that they have, so that they can, mitigate costs, mitigate compliance, while, keeping things under wraps. So secondly, I want to talk about AI. It's that shiny new toy. We can't have this conversation without talking about AI. The whole world wants to do more with it. But guess what? It's not valuable whatsoever if you don't know what data you have, if you don't know how your data is used. So hopefully my family is not watching this today, because I'm going to talk about cooking a meal. But try to picture, cooking a gourmet meal, but your, pantry's locked. You can't access the ingredients. You have no idea what's in your refrigerator. Guess what? The family's disappointed. You're not having dinner tonight without the right prep. So similarly, organizations need to think about simplifying their path to AI. And I see the foundational step in that into having a solid data foundation, where data is easily accessible by any application, any protocol, any user, located anywhere that you need it, so that you're better positioned to bridge that gap between your data and those AI services that you're going to use, that you want to leverage to crack your data open, to derive deeper insights from, so you can innovate better, outpace your competitors, make smarter business decisions, etc. The last thing I'll say about AI is you have to have your data has to have the right level of performance, because even the best of the best AI tools on the planet, they're going to fall flat. They're not going to deliver the value that you need if your data is not performing the way it needs to. Now, thirdly, before I hand it back to you, Scott, I want to talk about security. So you have to implement AI responsibly. So organizations have to stop myopically thinking about backup and recovery. Don't get me wrong. I spent a lot of time in my career focused on data protection. So backup and recovery is paramount. It's a key component of your overall strategy. But just take a look at any data company, any data technology storage company. You're going to see plastered all over the place, all over any analyst report, cyber resilience. Right? That's what organizations need to be laser focused on. Your data needs to stay up. It needs to stay available. It needs to stay secure, no matter what obstacle comes your way, whether that be a cyber threat, a disaster, some kind of catastrophic failure, site unavailability. So organizations need to, beyond backup and recovery, need to think on multiple facets, multi-layered security approach. Think to have intelligent detection capabilities. It's not just backing up data. Are my backups protected? Do I have multiple copies of those backups? And yes, I can recover, but can I recover quickly enough?
Yeah. A couple things on that. First off, I want to congratulate all of us for making it about 10 minutes in the conversation without bringing up AI in 2024. I feel like, and it's simply because AI's importance is because it permeates every size organization, every industry. The potential of what it can do in terms of changing our customer experience, in terms of internal productivity, is just so transformational. The promise of it is so fascinating. It is driving so many initiatives right now. The other thing, Michael, that you brought up that I also think is really important is that that closet analogy, right? Is we know that digital demands are going to skyrocket. We've been talking about this forever, but honestly, AI is now just an accelerator, not just an accelerator of data, but also it's going to demand a bunch of accelerators that use power, which Ian talked about around sustainability. But essentially, we have relatively fixed budgets and fixed power constraints outside of making huge outlays of new cost. So at the end of the day, It's about becoming smarter, becoming more efficient, and tying these things back together. Because one of the big things that you brought up is both performance and security, two of the big things, really, is we think about what AI's potential to do to make data more valuable. Well, what does that do? Well, it makes it a bigger opportunity for bad actors to come after us, which means we need to improve our security, but also it means it's more valuable to our own business to leverage it for things like AI to create competitive differentiation. And the challenge, which I think we've also hinted at, is similar to I think it was your cooking analogy as well. Is look, if you don't have the right ingredients and they're not accessible in the right elements, then you're not actually going to be able to deliver that meal. And that meal in this case is AI, and the ingredients, so to speak, or in that pantry, is going to be having proper data governance of understanding what data you have. And so I'd like to kind of switch gears a little bit, kind of dive maybe a bit deeper into this idea of cyber resilience, better cybersecurity, but also talking a little bit about data governance. So some research that we have at the Enterprise Strategy Group, and I continue to be fascinated by just the sheer threat that cyber threats present to modern business. For example, ransomware. We did this in a recent study. 89% of organizations rank ransomware as a top 5 threat to the viability of their organization. That's not, hey, we rank this as something really scary, or we rank this as something that we may actually have to spend money on or may increase our costs. This is things that we as a business might actually go out of business because of ransomware. It's that big of a threat. Also, we see in our research, 75% of organizations experienced an attempted attack over the last year. So it is pervasive. They're coming for you. It is a matter of when, not of if. And as a result, organizations need to, on one hand, be able to better support the data needs of their entire organization. Data is becoming more distributed. Michael, you brought that up, and the scaling both horizontally, which I actually think is a bigger challenge than it's scaling vertically. But at the same time, we have to secure these environments. Michael, I want to go back to you. How have you seen the increased threat of cyber attack impact data management strategies?
Excellent question. Thank you, Scott. So long gone are the days, gentlemen, where cyber attacks used to be an IT problem. Right? They're now everybody's problem. So let's jog our memories. Let's think back to some of those notable like ransomware attacks and data breaches we've seen in the industry. So Colonial Pipeline, we've heard this story over and over and over and over, but that threat was directly against Colonial Pipeline, but it didn't just affect that single entity, did it? No, it didn't. It affected our entire nation's fuel supply. There was pandemonium. There was traffic backups and supply chain issues. And I laughed because again, talking about these days, this hacker community has ransomware as a service. They can call up customer service that rivals that of like the best companies on the planet. So the stakes have absolutely changed. Companies used to be worried about losing data. Can't lose our data. Of course, that's still a concern. But more importantly, when you think about the magnitude of what I just talked about, losing customer credibility, losing customer trust, wasting time, wasting money, those things are nearly impossible to recover. You have a chance of recovering your data. These things, you really don't. So the stakes are much, much higher, today than they, have been in the past. Then if you think about CrowdStrike, right? Nobody expected that. That came out of the blue. CrowdStrike got hit. All of its, customers across the globe, they're now vulnerable to this attack that they weren't prepared for whatsoever. Those are my thoughts. So, Ian, anything to add from your side?
Yeah, so it's really changing. Cyber attacks are really changing how customers are managing their infrastructure, right? And I think the biggest challenge that I'm seeing is because of this term multi-cloud, which everyone thinks is marvelous and gives me all this flexibility and solves all of my problems, right? And amazingness. But in truth, what we've done is, as vendors, and everybody's guilty of this in the industry, is we've made something very complicated. We've said, I know, here are lots of hybrid clouds. You've got one for a little appliance over there. You've got some software defined here. You've got file. You've got block. You've got object. You may have some mainframe, and they're all silos. And then you say, okay, now we have to have cybersecurity. You go, oh my goodness me. All of these things may need something different, because I can't holistically manage them or understand or move data between them, right? So then you go, okay, and mainframe might need something different to an open system that will need something different to an unstructured system. But how can I utilize that hardware in a way that says, okay, well, maybe I can do air gapping from mainframe to open, but using the same hardware, right? Or using another system where I've got capacity. So the problem of multi-cloud is we have all these silos to manage, and there's a genuine compliance issue there too, right? Do I understand where my data is? So I think what we're seeing is, and you can see this, something as recent as June this year in the United Kingdom, sorry, biased, but the NHS had the Synovis attack, right? And this was where they had a siloed system doing pathology results that was hacked, right? Because it was its silo. So this is where I see this. How do we unravel the complexity of multi-cloud to help secure a data platform for our customers?
Excellent points, Ian. When I look at our own research and we look at why do organizations unexpectedly move data back from where we moved it to a public cloud and we moved it back. Some people call it repatriation. It's more of a rebalancing as organizations try to figure out the right balance. But often the top rationale is because of security, a breach, an attack. And that doesn't mean that the cloud is inherently less secure. It's not. It's just the fact that when you have lots of different things that you have to secure, it becomes increasingly more difficult to do that than it does to secure fewer things. And this is part of that complexity of multi-cloud. Is this desire for agility led us to start accessing as many things as we could, but at the same time having to access and manage data across all these things adds complexity, and it ties into a big element, which Michael, you brought up earlier, is that AI thing that's hitting everywhere. Is now we're looking at these disparate data environments, and now we not only need to protect and secure them, but now we also need to make sure that we govern them correctly so that we can do AI if the business so chooses. But let's kind of stay, before we get too far down that road, let's stay in this realm of security and protection. Ian, when it comes to data protection, particularly across multi-cloud, what do you recommend or what do you offer your customers in terms of recommendations?
Yeah, look, I mean, we have inherent built-in tools, right, that offer, security that's kind of inherently within technology. But I want to just keep it up a level first. I think, I want to continue on with my previous thread, which is let's help them with simplicity. And one of our latest releases, it's been in the press a lot, right? Our One Data platform with VSP1 was all about how we can simplify multi-cloud across multiple deployments, right? Without throwing away where you've already got invested. And I think what we're saying there is let's look at this high level problem, right? How can I help you understand where all your data is, how you can access all of your data, what's the compliance of that data? And then fundamentally, there are tool sets built into the platform that can lock down, that can offer you insights around, what's the best snapshot restoration, things like that. So we can give you kind of validated recovery points. We can lock down and give you immutable snaps. But it's really, I think, up-leveling. Understand where everything is. Is it easy to protect, first of all? Then you can use these underlying technologies to really rapidly give you a position to outwit some of these attacks that are happening.
Michael, anything to add?
Yeah. With respect to, better understanding your data, Ian, you made some excellent points. One thing comes to mind is that it's one thing to protect your data. And I mentioned earlier about intelligent threat detection, and I'd like to elaborate on that a bit. What that means is, not only becoming aware of these threats as they happen, but understanding what is the threat, where is it coming from, what data is impacted, what users are impacted, what's the sensitivity of the data being impacted, what files were impacted, so that when my teams get to a point, when the IT teams get to a point where they need to recover, they can do so intelligently, right? These are the files that were impacted. This is the last known good, so that they can respond more quickly and with confidence. The other thing that I want to add is, aligning your cybersecurity strategies or your data protection strategies to industry standard frameworks like NIST, because protecting data and recovering data, and even the detection aspects that I mentioned, those are all aspects. But you have to consider about identifying risks. You have to consider about how your teams respond. And you also have to consider holistically how you govern that data across all of those. So having a framework like NIST baked into your, cybersecurity practices or policies will allow you to kind of do things in a very comprehensive and repeatable fashion, no matter where your data is stored.
I want to go back to the idea of sustainability. I know we hit at this a little bit, but to me, I think this is one of the big emerging trends. We've seen it in our research, but essentially that underlies a lot of this. Sustainability will continue to grow on the priority list and is now one of those top priorities. I mentioned how many companies have carbon neutral as a stated goal. Then all of a sudden, AI gets everyone excited. All of a sudden, now we need to power these new accelerators. We want to make huge investments or outlays of new infrastructure, but at the same time, there's only so much power to go around and budgets are finite. One of the real fascinating stats that we've seen is 84% of organizations in our research agree that sustainability initiatives have accelerated their infrastructure modernization activities. And it's becoming a top storage purchase factor. So when we think about data storage, it's one of the top drivers of tell me about your sustainability initiatives. And this is not just for Europe. We're seeing it increasingly in North America as well. In some cases, it's driven by government regulations, but in some cases, it's driven by power availability and power cost. There's a number of factors. And again, like I said, it's a worldwide phenomenon. Ian, since I know sustainability is near and dear to your heart, how has the push for sustainable infrastructure impacted Hitachi Vantara's strategy?
Do you know what? It's a really interesting one, right? And as part of Hitachi Limited, one of our mottos is to always do what's right for the world and our customers, right? To make better products for everybody. So it's really inbuilt into who we are, right? And you can see that IT is really an untapped, almost press nightmare, right, for sustainability. Right? To give you some idea, we are dirtier than the airline industry, and we have seen the pressure that they've been under around, the CO2 production from airline travel. To be clear, North America alone, the data centers in North America, are dirtier than the global airline industry, right? So we are. And look, there was a press, what was it? Literally 3 weeks ago, September, Microsoft have restarted a reactor at 3 Mile Island because they need the power, right? This is now IT vendors going to power, grids and saying, I need more. You have to have, and how do we help our customers is really have an understanding of what, the sustainability elements we as vendors are providing. We can't just say it. Hey, we're more sustainable. I want proof. I want evidence. And there's laws around that. You can't just say I'm more sustainable. So for us, it's been a journey of certification, right? We're going to go we have our entire, and we're very lucky in that we own our own manufacturing and shipping and value chain. So I know where my metal comes from. I know what energy I'm using when I'm manufacturing a storage solution. So having those certifications from the likes of the carbon footprint for products, the CFP, is so important. I can give that data sheet to my customers and say, look, this is how much CO2 was produced in the full scope 1, 2, and 3 life cycle of the product. But the same then, for Energy Star. We've just recently had our Energy Star rankings for the new VSP1, and we're ranked 1, 2, and 3, first, second, and third for IOPS per watt. So important, right? That we're understanding what that watt is giving my business. But again, third-party validation, having that there really, really drives that understanding. And they can be inputted into a company's ESG report, their annual ESG report, and can be referenced as a way of lowering the company's overall CO2, which is super important. But look, I know, Michael, you've been working in this area as well, and I'd love for you to explain more to everybody on the call about what you've been doing in the file product as well, because I know you've been doing some interesting stuff.
Absolutely. Thanks, Ian. So, I spent the first 15 years or so of my career in IT operations, living in data centers, racking and stacking, managing all kinds of gear. I've touched my fair share of bezels, and I love to talk about the fact, and I know you like to laugh at me every time I brag about this, that 40% by weight of the bezels on the front of our VSP1 block and file units are comprised of post-consumer recycled materials. And that may seem like minutia, it may seem like a small detail, but it does matter because no other storage manufacturer in the planet is doing that. And, that's just one way that we embed sustainability into the technology we deliver to our customers. But, it starts way before that. And I know, Ian, you talked about we a technology is sourced from matters. So Hitachi Vantara, we're a Japanese company, right? We manufacture our stuff in Japan. And that geography produces 38% less CO2 than the rest of the world. And, I know customers often overlook, where their technology is sourced or where the technology, comes from. But it actually does matter because every single VSP1 unit that goes out the door reduces CO2 by up to 40% or more.
Ian, kind of building off of Michael's commentary, when it comes to sustainability, I hear a lot of this, and I get, sometimes even I get a little confused in this, and I think, maybe I'm speaking for part of our audience, is when I think about sustainability, we see power mentioned, we see materials mentioned, supply chain, we're talking about bezels. If I'm in the audience and I really want to help my organization prioritize, what should I prioritize when it comes to sustainability?
Outside of all those things, which are totally valid, right? They're saying, I want to save power and I want to understand that. But don't take any vendor's word for it. Don't take my word for it. Don't take Michael's crazy bezel's word for it, right? That's not his superhero name, by the way. But what we want our customers to do is seek for that external validation. One of the things that Michael was very coy about in that is that he's had those bezels certified by Prospector. They confirm the 40%. It's not just we've said it. I can give you a data sheet on it from their website. So it's all about having transparency. Ask your vendors. Say, okay, if you're saying that, show me. If it's going to save me X amount of power, show me the validation that supports that. Use Energy Star. Use carbon footprint organizations, and also look for those little nuggets. Even like what Michael was saying about the bezels, where's that validated? Once they're validated, you can use it in your ESG report. Now you can say, I have actually helped reduce CO2, and it is measured for my organization. So external validation means that you can present that to the board. You are making a difference. That's the important thing to remember.
Yeah, I love it. It's, trust but verify, or maybe in this case, don't trust but also verify. And it goes back to, Ian, you said this earlier, and it's something I believe in. If you can't measure it, you can't improve it, right? So you have to make sure that you're able to measure things, especially when it comes to sustainability. And, put that pressure, if you're in the audience listening to this, put that pressure on the vendors, make them prove it, because, we don't need any more hand waving of, oh no, we're sustainable, excuse me. It's about making sure that they can put numbers to what their claims are. And that's true for sustainability. It's true for performance. It's true for anything. Talking about claims or talking about technology, Ian, I want to bring this back to what Hitachi Vantara is doing. And particularly, you mentioned VSP1 earlier. I assume everyone in the audience obviously knows about VSP1, but there might be some that don't. Real quick, could you kind of give an overview? What is VSP1?
Yeah, thank you, Scott. So look, for everybody that isn't aware, a virtual storage platform has been an underpinning of our storage portfolio for an exceedingly long time, right, for decades. And this is the new reimagined version of Virtual Storage Platform 1, VSP1. And this is our vision to bring together our entire portfolio of storage offerings so that you can take a solution and you can take the data services that you need, right? There's one thing I buy, and I can either have block, file, or object, however I want to use it. either as an appliance, software-defined, or running in the public cloud. The same code base, whatever I need to consume. So that gives this multitude of flexibility. I can start on a 2U appliance. I can have an enterprise system. I can have software defined. And I can move that data around however I need to see fit and just take the data services that I need, block, file, or object. So it's layered. It's an absolute layered. As Donkey says, I'm like an onion. I've got layers, right? So it's all about customer choice without lock-in, so you have flexibility. So think about that multi-cloud I was talking about at the beginning, right? I've got 3 different hybrid clouds I have to manage. Not here. They all have holistic management, right? So it's all in management. You don't have a separate console for each things. And they can literally build like a transformer on top of each other as you scale. They do scale up, scale out, as you see fit. So the idea being is we want to give you flexibility in the data center, but remove that complexity of multi-cloud that we have here. So it gives customers that ability to deploy what they want when they want.
Ian, thanks for the overview. I want to take it a little bit further. I mean, we talked about many of the challenges. I think you mentioned a little bit about how it helps address some of these challenges of multi-hybrid cloud environments, but some of the other things around security, around protecting data, around performance, around sustainability. How is VSP1 addressing these challenges?
So that's a really good question. So let me attack on a few of those things. So first thing that gives us a lot of flexibility is the common operating system we're using across all of these deployments. Doesn't matter what you're getting something called Storage Virtualization Operating System, SVOS. This is what has underpinned us since our first ever VSP came to market. So we have lots of history built upon this operating system. And let me tell you, it's designed for resilience. That's why we've always had this 100% data availability guarantee. 23 years we've had this guarantee, right? And only now are we seeing other rivals start to offer something. That's because of what we've done in SVOS. So that resiliency and availability and uptime now underpins everything we do from block, file, and object. Okay, well, that's fantastic. Now I have lots of resilience and capability around immutable snapshots, validated recovery points that underpin all this technology across the board, including things like data reduction, right? And we've taken a step back with things like data reduction, simplifying and compacting and, removing sprawl, data sprawl as such. Well, our customers, there's guarantees on data reduction, from other vendors. We've seen 7 to 1, 5 to 1, but there's lots of caveats, T's and C's, lots of questions. I want to see your data. Don't store this on a Wednesday. You can't have that, right? Otherwise, we won't give you the capacity you need. And it's like, well, this is silly. So ours is 4 to 1, no questions asked. Store whatever you want. I don't care. Block, file, or object on VSP1. If you don't get 4 to 1, we make you whole. And the moment that you don't sign up for anything, it comes with the quote. So trying to simplify everything for our customers, how you do business with us, also to how you're taking these technologies. But look, once we start to bring these things together, the biggest thing is around the customer experience, right? Managing the fact across block, file, and object now just comes into one holistic environment. And this is wonderful. You go, oh, this is utopia. But I've also got this Dell stack over here, and I've got maybe a bit of HPE over there, and maybe some NetApp. What do I do, right? And I've still got these silos. Well, what VSP1 can do is take those solutions and make them part of the platform. So we're completely open. We are not looking for forklift upgrades. You can still have NetApp doing file, but it can be managed under VSP1 with a common API. And that's the power of having, the one platform piece that then presents out a common data fabric for when we look at things like, data inferencing and generative AI. And is that you want to build a data lake, or would you just rather have one platform with a data fabric, right? You don't need to have that cost and expenditure if you can bring everything together. So look, lots of things to unpack from that, right? And we'd love to get into more detail with, if you're on this call, come and follow up with us, right? There's tons that's going on in this space, tons of innovation. And, even on the sustainability piece, we've actually launched 2 new pieces of technology. Dynamic carbon reduction. So it's actually a patented feature we've got inside VSP1 that's lowering the P state of the functionality within the boxes. So, and also dynamic compression switching. So from inline to post-process, lowering that power state when the box isn't needed. So there's lots of innovation there, Scott, lots of things that we can go and dive into. We'd love to help everyone on this call understand more about the platform vision.
Yeah, thanks for that, Ian. What jumped out to me was I mean, in addition to all the things, was the storage virtualization capability, just the investment protection it has in terms of allowing you to modernize, but also kind of on your own terms. Essentially, it's based on what your investment is right now. I found that really interesting when I took a look at it. Michael, Ian, thank you for that. With that, we're quickly running up on time, and while we've been having the conversation, I've been watching the questions come in. I wanted to make sure we had time to address a few of the audience questions that we have. So let me jump over to that one, or the couple I think that we have. Let me see. There's a question about does VSP1 have ransomware protection? Don't know, Michael, Ian, if you guys want to chat on that one.
Yeah, so I can take that one. Let me start off. So yes, absolutely. So fundamentally, we have a ransomware or cyber resiliency guarantee that's part of VSP1, and that sits across our block file and object capabilities on the platform. It's made up of two parts. So the first is immutable data snapshots called SafeSnap, and that essentially gives you the ability to lock down data, make sure you have a vault as such within the VSP, and you can't delete that data. Not even we can delete that data. Right? It is locked when you do that for a period of time. There is an upcharge to a validated recovery point, and this gives you the ability then to know with 97% accuracy which of those snapshots should I restore, because that's the key piece, is knowing which one is the thing I need to restore to, right? So there's a little charge for that. It's not particularly large, but it gives you that ability to then instantly get back in a very, very short period of time back to an operating state. So yeah, they're the two techie pieces that are bolted in there for sure.
All right, perfect. Oh, and I think one other one here that I think we have time to get to is what kind of data reduction? I know you kind of talked about this, but it looks like the person's asking, is it dedupe? Is it compression?
Hey, Scott, sorry, not to interrupt, but is it okay if I chime in with, I also have some thoughts on the ransomware protection, commentary that Ian shared. So, my focus is file portfolio. And when we think about a typical ransomware payload, I mean, of course, they're after data. Data is data, but mainly they're after our files because that's the bread and butter of our business. So to answer the question, yes, of course, VSP1 file has both built-in ransomware protection, but that also extends to our security partner ecosystem. And why is that? Well, think about the traditional ransomware payloads where you'd have some malicious code. That malicious code runs and it tries to seek out, data, and it does a directory walk and it tries to encrypt as much, data as possible to get that big, huge ransomware payout. But in the age of AI and AI-enhanced ransomware variants, they're doing a lot more than that. They can now mimic personas. They can now steal credentials. They can now gain access to management tools. And you know what that means? That means is organizations are worried about a lot more than just losing data, right? You're talking about overtaking entire environments. You're talking about leaking sensitive information. So with that said, VSP1 file obviously has all the expected, essentials like replication, encryption, role-based access controls, multi-factor authentications, all the things you would expect in an enterprise storage product. But in addition to that, for example, we have integrations with CyberArk, which basically adds a layer of zero trust security over your data. So for any kind of elevated data operations or elevated management operations, we can do things like one-time passwords, automatic password rotations. So when those operations need to happen, they happen in a very controlled fashion. That integration also allows us to do things like session shadowing. So if in the case of like a data exfiltration or stolen credentials, you can actually watch malicious actions or potentially malicious actions against your management UI, your management console, and you can stop them in their tracks. So that's why it's important, to think about a more holistic approach. Yes, protect your data, but also secure your data access and the integrity of that data. We also know that a ton of our customers are enterprise customers, so they use tools like Splunk. Siemens Source Solutions. They use tools like Varonis, which we have seamless integration with, not only to better protect data, but to do intelligent threat detection, automated responses, which helps to in the case of ransomware impact. You want to keep your teams on high alert. You want to have the ability to have as much intelligence about the threat as possible, not only about well-known threats, but also about emerging threats, that are not maybe so well known in the industry. So yes, security, it's a huge priority for us. And, Ian, we're very close to, the product teams, and we're constantly thinking about new ways that we can, better protect data for our customers. But sorry for the kind of sidebar on that, but I thought that was important.
Don't apologize. I'm glad you did. Honestly, we probably could have done a whole conversation just on all the different things you have around ransomware protection, given how critical it is. Did you want to comment on the data reduction question, though?
Yeah, just briefly. I know I touched on it earlier, right? But absolutely, we have deduping compression like most vendors have. The difference we have here is that we have patented technology around this, and you can see the patents on our global website. And this is about having a compression offload capability. So what we've tried to do is, and I mentioned this around the sustainability element, is that we have made data reduction to switch from inline to post-process. So dynamically, customers can't choose, it happens. Why? Well, because when you're inline, which is what everybody wants, it's super fast, it uses a ton of power. Reality, welcome to the world. But when it's not busy and we have extra cycles in the CPU, we can offload that to post-process, and we can take a bit longer to do that dedupe compression and actually, save some energy while we're doing it. To aid with that, we have these new compression accelerator cards that have been developed, new algorithms on them, and they're patented to Hitachi Vantara, and they just really accelerate that capability. So actually remove load from CPU means we can lower the P state even more, and that's why we're seeing that actually from our VSP E series to a VSP1, so 2U controller, 2U box, we're seeing a 60% reduction in CO2 just from moving from the same 2U to 2U, right? Because of all of these new technologies that we brought to market. So yeah, super cool. And literally that's the choice now on VSP1. How fast do you want your compression? Do you want it slow or really fast? That's the only choice, right? We've tried to make it all about the experience for customers.
All right. And with that, we're out of time. If you did submit a question and we didn't get to it, somebody from Hitachi Vantara will reach out. And with that, Ian, Michael, thank you guys so much. This is a great conversation.
Thanks, Scott.
Thank you very much, Scott. Thanks for having us. And thanks for joining, folks.
And before we get out of here, Ian, where can folks in the audience go if they want to learn more?
Oh, definitely go to demos.hitachivantara.com, and you can actually drive through VSP1 yourself. We've got live demos, canned demos. Get in there, get involved, touch it and feel it and experience it for yourself, or come to our website, hitachivantara.com.
No, excellent. Well, with that, highly recommend everyone go check out a demo. And with that, thanks to our audience for watching, and have a wonderful rest of your day.